In this video, we're going to have a brief look at what is meant by the term feminism as a concept in media studies. Obviously, we have our set theorists who look at this term in more specific detail, namely Judith Butler, Lisbeth van Zoenen and Bell Hooks. And I will talk about that in subsequent videos. This one is just really to have a look at feminism as an umbrella term that incorporates lots of different ideas and one that's changed during the course of history. So, feminism at its most simplistic, at its most basic, is to do with women identifying an inequality in society, identifying a level of discrepancy between the way that they are treated and the way that their male counterparts are treated. And this has manifested itself in different ways throughout history. So roughly speaking, feminism is divided into three what we call waves. So the first wave feminists would be people like the suffragettes, who even were willing to give up their lives for the sake of the vote for women. This was a huge step forward in terms of the way that society viewed men and women. Now, women wouldn't have been able to vote because they weren't seen as intellectually matched with men. And we'd like to think that we've come quite a long way from that culture and that society. In the first wave as well, you had the attitude after the Second World War where women thought, actually, we can do the jobs that have traditionally been held by men. We can fulfil the roles that men have been fulfilling until now. And so women started to come forward to do those particular jobs. So that's our first wave feminism, the realisation that actually society was not offering women a fair hand. Second wave feminism came during the 1960s and 1970s with social revolution, with sexual revolution and the contraceptive pill, women feeling as though they could take control of their bodies for the first time. But even so, the mainstream media still portrayed women as second-class citizens, as objects to be looked at, and largely in the 1960s the role of women was still in the home. So third wave feminism is about identifying how far culture and society have moved since that point. We have celebrities and people in the media now who would define themselves as feminists, and really third wave feminism has more to do with equality than progress. And you might think, well, there's not much point in that because we have a female Prime Minister, we have high-powered, high-paid women in the media, there's an increase in females in management, in media industry, and all of this is true. However, there are particular theorists who would argue that society, by its very structure, is still highly patriarchal, is still highly male dominated. Some, like Lakoff, even argue that it's to do with language that this is the case, that the language that we use will ensure that the status quo remains the same. And women can't make progress because the English language doesn't enable them to. At its most basic level, and we've spoken about things like this in class, you have transitions in words from gingerbread man to gingerbread person, and we think that maybe this is taking it one step too far to give a biscuit a particular gender, but it does highlight this issue that actually our language is fairly male dominated still. The whole issue and debate surrounding man-sized tissues at the moment as well is something that has provoked conversation about why lots of language that we use refers back to men. Additionally, we know that women in certain jobs are still not getting paid as much as men who are doing exactly the same job. We know that in Hollywood and in the film industry there is still a large discrepancy in pay between male actors and female actors. We know that there are very few women who are actually doing the job of film director. So there are some theorists like Laura Mulvey who will argue that cinema and film is shown from a male point of view. So it's very difficult to make any kind of meaningful progress when everything that we see on screen and in other forms of media are shown from a largely male perspective. Some theorists and some feminists will argue that actually, even though on paper it looks as though women have come a long way in obtaining the equality that they desired from the beginning, that actually the very structure, the language, the ownership of the media in our society prevents women from making any significant progress. Therefore, you have people standing as advocates for feminism in our modern culture, people like Emma Watson, who is the UN Goodwill Ambassador, who's trying to promote feminism as something positive and something that is not associated with man-hating. And this idea of equality underpins our set theories in feminism. But this has just been a brief introduction into what feminism is and into how it's developed and where it might be going in the future.